Greetings all. Welcome to another session here of Tuzi Talks. Today we're going to continue our discussions on language curriculum development. Bear in mind that much of this information is coming out of Nation and McAllister's textbook, Language Curriculum Design. We're going to be looking at formatting and presenting the materials that you're going to organize as you put them into the scope and sequence as you do after you do your needs analysis and the like. Today we're going to be focusing on that section over here called Format and Presentation. Now it's in here that you're going to decide your formats after looking at your needs and knowing what it is that you're going to be setting out within your scope and sequence. We're going to talk about setting up the format, possibly doing things like blocks and threads, and also talking a little bit about techniques and activities. Now, you got to decide your format. That's step one. What format do I want to use? How am I going to set this up so that I can get all these materials to my students in such a way that they're going to learn? They're going to want to learn. Some principles that you want to consider before you make a decision. One, motivation. Okay, whatever you're doing, however you're presenting it, it's got to be motivating to your students. So if you're dealing with little guys who like to run around and play, activities that you might use to present some of your material might be something like TPR. That would be a fun activity for your little ones to play with. Older ones may not like that as much. Whatever you're doing is however you're presenting this stuff, make sure it's motivational. Make sure also that you're going to be including all four strands. You're going to be doing input, output, language, and fluency. You're going to be focusing on all of them when you're creating this out. Make sure that you focus on comprehensible input. In other words, provide lots of opportunities to practice with the materials that they already know. Give lots of opportunities for reading and listening, speaking and writing so that they can get greater fluency in what they're doing. Make sure that you have opportunities for fluency, opportunities for students to talk to one another, to talk to native speakers so that they can increase that. And make sure that you have opportunities for pushed output production. Don't just give them information, make them use it. Make them use it early on so that they can understand that they have control over those language components. So make sure you got these 5 things in play as you're deciding on how you're going to present this. A couple other things that you want to make sure you're aware of. One is deliberate learning. Make sure that the activities are focused on form every now and again. That they're focused on that actual learning, okay? Another point that you want to remember is that you're going to have time on task. It's easy, or can be easy, for people to begin to go off topic, for people to begin to talk about other things. And so you want to keep them back on track, That may mean that if you notice that the class is, starting to veer off to the side here and you're beginning to lose you want to pull them back into play, giving them a new activity. Change the topic. Let's do something else. Or, telling them, okay, let's focus. Every now and again, I might just say, I'm walking around and noticing that my students may be losing a little focus, so I say, 2 minutes! I yell out there, I got 2 minutes to go. That helps them refocus, keeping time on task. I got to notice that, though. That's the key. As a teacher, I need to notice that. Make sure that some of the work that they're doing has some depth of processing, that they're looking deeply into the language, into the content. And the deeper they can go in and actually learn and understand it, the more likely they're going to be able to retain that information longer. Try to include some type of integrative motivation within the presentation. In other words, create materials that are devised in such a way that people want to participate in that new culture that they're trying to learn. Whether it's trying to integrate into a school or integrate into a company, integrate into some group because they want to be a part of that group. Try to encourage that type of motivation. And finally, remember that there are a variety of learning styles. Not everybody learns visually. Some learn orally, some learn kinesthetically, and so to bear in mind those differences. Try to present your materials in such a way that you have some overlap with different learning styles to accommodate your students. All right, the 4 strands, something that you're going to want to make sure that you have. I'm just going to run through these very quickly. Make sure that you have meaning-focused input. Opportunities for them to focus on the listening and the reading. And so they're going to have some form of meaning focus. In other words, they're trying to understand what's going on. They're not trying to learn the linguistics of it. Okay, meaning focused input. They're trying to understand what's being communicated to them. Meaning focused output. Okay, this is them trying to communicate. Whether they're speaking or whether they're writing, provide opportunities for them to try to communicate so that they have some meaning-focused output. The focus is on the output. The focus is on the input. Language focus. This is the study of the language. This is the grammar. This is the focus on form. And you do need some of that. Again, in the past, there are lots of teachers who, that's the only thing they focused on. We want to focus on all 4 strands. Okay, and the last one is fluency development, and we want to focus on people's abilities to communicate sounding natural, sounding like a native speaker in their speech. Okay, so another opportunity for them to practice that way. I actually have students who tell me to slow down. You need to slow down so I can understand. And I'm like, that's bad for your fluency. So I'm going to be talking like this, and you can understand me. That's great. So I want to provide opportunities to get native speakers, and possibly even, New York speakers, because they tend to talk a little faster than people who are down, south in Mississippi or Alabama. But the point is fluency practice. Try to work with all 4 strands when you're presenting materials, okay? Make sure that you do all 4. You can use things like comprehension questions, but make sure that they're working on not only meaning, but also components. Okay, so it's good for practice, obviously, but you can use it with vocabulary, and you can make it receptive and productive. So you can use these comprehension questions more than just, do you understand the content? They can be used for multiple practice opportunities and for studying linguistic features. This is a nice little key here. You can ask them, what is this in a sentence? What does this represent? What does this mean? And we can also talk about other things as well, like critical thinking, which is an excellent thing to do. I liked using TV commercials. I've done them in the past where we use a little TV commercial. It's a little 20-second movie, if you will. Students could then analyze it. They could listen. They could talk about it. And then we could think about who is the intended audience? What are they trying to sell? How are they trying to convince people? We can critically analyze things like that. So it's a good opportunity when you're having comprehension questions. All right. When you're going to create a course, it's often a good idea to have a set format. Okay? Not that everything is the same every week, but that you have certain components in your class that are pretty much set so that you can create a habit in your class. You can create some stability in your classes. And so those are some good reasons to have that. One is to establish a pattern of actions, to develop a habit, to establish standard activities, to ensure that your formats include all 4 strands. So you want to try to set up some kind of a format. So let's, again, just for example, you have an hour, you have 60 minutes. How many different activities can you do there? Well, you got 4 strands, so maybe you want to do 4 different activities, right? 15 minutes each, and then you can work at it that way. Maybe 15 minutes is too much time for an activity, and so you're going to have 6 activities, at 10 minutes each. I don't know exactly how you're going to do that, but you're going to want to set them up. And some of them can be standard. Like, for example, there are times where I wanted to practice fluency, and I would often do it as the first thing in my class. So the students walk in, and the moment they walk in, they speak in the target language, and they're practicing. Maybe they're practicing a script. Maybe they're just talking with a neighbor. What did you do today? Where did you go? Maybe they're talking about a specific, I put a topic on the board and say, find somebody to talk with regarding this. So they're practicing fluency. Okay, but that's a set thing for me in the class. And students kind of know what that means. I can even write it up on the board. Free conversation or topic time. And they'll know what that is. And they'll be able to engage in that because they understand what it is. You can establish a good pattern, and also I know that I have a checklist of all the things that I want to cover. So you can set up things like blocks, which is basically what I just described to you earlier. A segment of class time that is a separate and somewhat self-contained, for listening time, free conversation time. But it's good to have these blocks. And I would, again, have 4 or 5 of them, actually 7 or 8 of them. I may not use them every class, but I have them, and students know what they are when we begin to do them. The other element is a thread. And a thread is basically an idea, a concept, a project that you're working with throughout a course, throughout a series of blocks. Okay? Think of it as an actual thread, like that's in your fabric, and it weaves through other things. So, for example, we may be talking about a holiday like Valentine's Day, and you'll have a series of blocks. Well, maybe your block is, again, a topic time, and you're going to be talking about something. Well, you can talk about Valentine's Day. And maybe then you're going to be doing something about reading, and you can provide materials for reading that are related to Valentine's Day. So Valentine's Day becomes this thread that goes through all of your blocks. And that's basically the idea there. Setting up blocks and threads reduces the need for detailed planning and organization, because eventually your students know, oh, that's what we do during this time. That's what we do during that time. Or that's how we're going to use this same topic or idea as we weave through all these different blocks. Definitely a plus. At times, I would walk into a classroom and I could write down 6 or 8 different blocks on the board, block titles that my students have learned, and now, hey, it's going to be easier for them because they know what's going to be coming. They know the process and the things that they're going to understand. All right, some techniques and activities. Experience. Activities that use prior knowledge and already learned material emphasizes fluency development. So when you're getting ready to create or to present, think about the experience that your students have, and you may want to be able to use that as an opportunity. So you also can do shared activities, pair or group activities, where your students help each other or provide information that someone is missing, like a gap fill activity. Paired reading, where someone has a certain part and you have the other part. Maybe there's peer feedback. There are some games as well, where you have to talk back and forth in order to share information. And I love peer feedback, especially with regard to writing or presentations, where you can encourage one another with thoughts and ideas. Okay, that's a whole bunch of things that are going on there. So that would be shared. A guided type of activity, activities that are partially completed, activities that require you to fill in information. So a lot of this has to do with worksheets that you may provide your students. And they need to fill in things. Maybe it's a fill in the blank, or it's a substitution type of thing. I have also done things that are guided as far as guiding them to finish a project. They've already done a similar project once, and now there's just guiding information for them, helping them to walk along and do it. Kind of like, when you need to put in a fan in the wall of your building, right? And you've seen the video, right? Which you've seen this, and now you're going to actually walk through the process, and someone is guiding you through it. Well, first you have this first experience where you're visually experiencing how it's done, and then you do a guided type of thing where you can actually walk through the process. So we've got use experience, we have shared activities where they're helping each other and you as a teacher aren't doing much. You've got guided activities where you're providing a little more support, and then you've got completely independent. So in independent activity, you give them a project and you basically walk away. You let them do it. They have control over how it's going to progress. Now, they may come to you with advice or questions or, help in understanding something, but you're standing back there. You're allowing them to use the language, to do the exploring. You're allowing them to try and understand what's going on. So those are different types of techniques that you can use inside. Some points to remember: when you choose to develop a course and you're going to try to present everything, make sure that you choose your primary techniques and activities. Choose the primary ones that you're going to use as you go through, okay? Plan the lesson, plan the format of the lesson. Decide how you're going to format everything. What block are you going to do first? What threads are you going to have during what part of the course? Plan those things out and then begin to write your lessons. Okay? So in other words, you're doing kind of a top-down approach where you're beginning general, okay, this is my scope and sequence. Now I'm going to take this information, I'm going to try to format it in this way. We're going to do these types of activities. And then go down to, okay, now I'm going to do this particular activity. I'm going to be pulling in these objectives, all right? I'm going to be pulling in this content because my students are interested in them, and I'm going to put this together in the form that I have, in the presentation blocks that I'm going to be using, in the threads that I'm going to incorporate, and I'm going to write my lesson. Hope this makes sense. Some notes. Remember that the format and presentation is only one component, right? I can present and form these things, but I got to be able to pull in the objectives. I got to be able to pull in, any assessments that I may need to do. There are other components that need to come in. I need to know what the needs and wants are, right? So I need to pull in a variety of things, okay? Also be just a reminder, make sure that your lessons are balanced, that you're hitting all 4 strands. Planning is made easier when you're using blocks and threads. I want to show you real quick an example of some possible guides for students. This is one that I actually made a while ago, but you'll see I have some objectives here. Some of these objectives include meaning-focused input, output, language focus, and fluency development. So I included those in here. There are some other requirements that are here. You'll note I've got all 6 components here. I have the 4 skills. I have the 2 databases. We're going to be doing some extensive reading in here, so I have the amount of readings that your students should be doing. Okay? Bear in mind, this is not a syllabus. This is not a guide for a particular course. This type of document you give to a teacher, and they use this in order to develop lessons, in order to develop a syllabus or a course guide. There's no schedule here. So all that's here are all the things that should be here when you're going to teach the course. So you may be using course materials, right? You may be giving them a textbook. You may let them choose. But I've got graded readers here. I've got vocabulary lists here. And I'm going to give these to the teacher. And I'm expecting the teacher to cover this information at this particular level. Let's go on further. We've got level C. Look, I've got reading skills. They should be working on these reading skills and these writing skills and these speaking functions, speaking tasks. So these are things that I think should be incorporated somewhere in the course. These are the guides for this level. Here are your grammar items. Again, guides for this level. And so at some point throughout here, students should be walking into having an opportunity to practice with these. Remember, the grammar stuff is only 20-25% of the course, the focus on form segments. But you still want to be able to try to cover these elements throughout this particular course. And then I have the 2,000 most frequently used words, okay, high frequency vocabulary. So, and here are the words. So I'm going to have my teachers say, these are the words your students should know by the time they leave. How these are put into a course, how these are assessed, is up to the teacher. The teacher may want to use a textbook. The teacher may not want to use a textbook. That's up for them. That's up to them to decide. But they're going to use this material in order to develop their blocks and their threads, their techniques and their activities. And so they're going to create a schedule, right? They're going to create a schedule where you've got, for me it would be 15 weeks. And then beyond those 15 weeks, now I go into week 1 and I meet for 3 hours. Well, what am I doing for these 3 hours? And I want to create some blocks and some threads, but I want to put in what content? Well, I want to put in opportunities to practice, with meaning-focused input and output. Well, that means that I'm going to be doing meaning-focused input and output. Well, here's meaning-focused input here. Here's meaning-focused output here. Output here. I'm going to try to find some way to incorporate these into my blocks and threads. Same thing is going to be for the focus on language or the focus on fluency. Provide opportunities to do that. It's going to change depending on, obviously, the language requirements for your students, their abilities, and whatnot. But now I'm taking all these different pieces now, and I'm trying to put them together in a schedule that includes blocks and threads so that things are going to be easier and things are going to be presentable to your students. Lastly, if I could just re-emphasize the need for motivation. I find that some teachers, they create activities, but they don't notice that their students may or may not be motivated. And so motivation to me is one of the key things. Yes, I want the 4 strands. Yes, I want practice for and output opportunities. But if my students aren't motivated, I'm going to lose them. Okay? And if I begin to lose them in a class, let's just say you set up a schedule and you've got blocks and you have a thread and you're walking through a particular block and for some reason your students are, they're out there, right? Time for me to do something to change that, to keep motivation high. And obviously there are a number of ways to do that. The two simple things is the carrot and the stick. I personally do not like the stick. I'd much rather prefer the carrot to try to encourage them to do things. But motivation should be a very strong key as you're considering to do the layout and the presentation of your materials. I did have a teacher one time who was just very wacky. And he came in to class, and almost every time he came into class, he came in with these really funky, huge slippers while he was in class. I mean, the guy wore a tie and a nice shirt, but he wore these really funky slippers, and the students loved it. It was a wacky thing, but it was a way to get them motivated. They thought it was a pretty cool thing. Some students even took to bringing their own slippers to school, and when they went into his class, they put these slippers on because he wanted you to have fun and relax as you were learning. But bear in mind, he was still using, the requirements, like these requirements, but he presented it in such a way that it was motivating to the students. So my goal for you is that when you're formatting your schedule and as you're deciding on how you're going to present this, make it motivating. Make it such a way that your students can't wait to come back. Okay? Can't wait to come back. You may have a lot of great ideas. You may know what your students need, what they're lacking, what they want. But if you're not going to present this in a way that's motivating to them, you're going to lose them. And so please find ways to keep them motivated. That's all I have for this session. I do hope that you enjoyed this. If you do have any questions, you can post them down at the bottom. Thank you for being by. Talk to you later.